everybody. I hope you all can hear me very normally use, but that's because I'm usually a hot mess. I'm running late to get to a job site right now, and I'm actually making this video, and hopefully it won't go in and out because I'm going through a town that's usually kind of a dead zone. But so the reason I'm making this video on the way to work is because I was actually this at home on my laptop. The problem is, and it's kind of a long background here, but I'm having to reteach myself typing so I can type much quicker. Be good. I don't really think when I do the video, kind of a hit. So here's what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw some things out there, and they are kind of the random thoughts that were supposed to make up the video that I was going to do this morning. But there were good reasons why I went. It's not just the typing thing. So more and more as I study the Old Testament, I am getting more and more convinced that the events that are described in the Bible did not take place in or around Palestine. Now, this one I would really like to put to bed. I mean, either to say, okay, well, it did take place in Palestine, and Jerusalem really is what we think and where we think it is, and same with Babylon and Nineveh and Egypt, even though it's never called it's Matsurim. It's never called Egypt. It's the land that our ancestors were enslaved in for 400 plus years. It's called Matsurim. The core of the word is Tsur, which is actually the name of one of the Phoenician cities. You have Tsur and Sidon. And that Sadi, it's called, shows up a lot in the name of cities, certain specific cities. What's interesting is that Sadi and the Yad together, Tzi, is used oftentimes for shipping or ports. So I find it very interesting that the one of the alternate names for the city of David is Tzion. Now, that factors into a lot of this because, of course, if you go and you read 1 Samuel, the account of David taking the city, says that he took Tzion, and it describes how he built it up. But if you look on a modern map of what is called Jerusalem, and you see where the city of David was supposedly located, and then Mount Zion, and what's supposed to be the Temple Mount, which is clearly bears the resemblance to a Roman fortress. And then you have to consider the fact that the Romans, when all of the hubbub was happening in Acts, were looking down on the temple from their fortress. So you've got to put the temple what was, and I think you're going to be hard pressed to do that, especially facing the directions that it's supposed to face and everything. That's just one thing. If any of you care to go to Deuteronomy chapter 8, might start in verse 5, where Yahweh is describing the land that they're going to come into. And he says it is not a land that lacks bread. He says you won't lack for bread. It is, he told many times, it's a land of plenty. It won't lack fat, a land of milk. It's going to be a land full of and deep springs of water, Tehum, he uses. And Tehum is not some little a little teeny bubbly spring. We're talking about big springs. I'm finding these common cores which should make up areas and natural phenomenon that are much greater, much more lush and rich than what we see in the Middle East, what we see in Palestine and the surrounding areas. And so here's what I'm starting to kind of mull over in my head about all of this. So there are, unfortunately, about the only people out there that are giving us the information, let's say the only academics out there that are giving us any kind of alternative information to biblical and Israeli archaeology, are atheists. Of all things, we've got to turn to the atheists to actually get a counter argument, because there's not a professed Christian out there that's willing to say, yeah, hang on, you know what, this doesn't add up. Hey, hang on, these people over there, you know, they don't fulfill any kind of a good prophecy. I mean, these people are scoundrels. So unfortunately, it takes a lot of atheists to start showing the fact that there's not a shred of evidence that a few million people lived for 40 years in the Sinai wilderness. And when you start to consider the details of their stay in the Sinai wilderness, that doesn't seem to add up very well. When you consider the fact that in the 1940s, when these whoever they are, the Synagogue of Satan, decided to occupy Palestine, they brought in a bunch of these groups, and the inception and the background of these groups is rather nefarious. These groups are called kibbutzes, or kibbutzim. They're essentially what they were groups of communists. And they were the ones who have, to this day, been credited with building all of the agriculture that the Israeli state now currently has. You'll notice that if you go and do searches for images or articles about forests in Palestine, you will find some forests. The problem is, you are not going to find old, lush, dense forests. The forests you will find is either the one forest that they admittedly artificially generated on the border of the Negev desert, and a couple of other forests, like northern forests, like around Carmel and other regions. You'll notice that those trees all look quite young. They're also made up of a lot of conifer variety, darn near anywhere and fast. The agricultural portion of what these kibbutz or kibbutzim created is, let me say this. There are very few people out there that are going to talk about this, because so many people are so deceived by this is not real deception, that they're not, at the risk of being punny, they're not seeing the forest for the trees. They're not understanding that when these kibbutzes were established around the time that Israel was established as a nation, went into Palestine, buying up a lot of land, and then doing everything they could to push Palestinians out of land that was rightfully theirs that they were staying on. That these kibbutzes, they had pretty much unlimited money and resources. Okay, so you'll find a lot of articles even nowadays about all of the great technological achievements and advancements over in Israel. I promise you that just like Albert Einstein, none of that stuff was generated or comes from the mind of these so-called Jews. So you've got still at this point, even after these kibbutzes planted all this that didn't exist and is not a land that would naturally sustain much agriculture, and they admit it. Half of it is desert. So think about this. The fact is, there is within the borders of what is considered Israel-Palestine, there is right around probably about 4 million people. As I said, they have gone to great lengths to use all kinds of modern technology, and money was not an object. They had unlimited money from all the extortion they were doing to the German people, to other countries. All they've been silently extorting out of the United States and so on and so forth. Money was not an issue. They had the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds financing it too. So it wasn't a problem to create all of these agricultural areas that they now have. And they'll tell you things like, well, Israel is one of the chief exporters of milk in the world today. So obviously that's where we're getting all of our horrifically tainted milk from, by the way. So you figure, all right, between Israelis and Palestinians, you've got somewhere in the neighborhood like maybe 3 to 4 million people there. They say that between the livestock they raise there and all of these kibbutz agricultural projects, that they're able to feed themselves about 90%. And then they say they have exports and all that. All right, with all the money in the world behind them and modern technology. All right, well, consider this. In the time of the kingdom of David and Solomon, the population of just Israelites in that land, and I'm not saying that's the land, I'm saying in the land that was promised to them, wherever it is, there were, somewhere in the neighborhood of the low estimate is 1.3 million, the high estimate is close to 1.6 million able-bodied soldiers who could be called up to war. So when you start doing the exponential figures as far as how many of them were brothers, every single person has to have a mother and a father. Typically they have grandparents. Some of those grandparents are going to be common grandparents. Same with aunts and uncles, but then you have to consider, if you have that many able-bodied soldiers, how many children are you going to have that are under the age of being able-bodied? How many women are you going to have, as in their wives, their sisters, their daughters, and then how many babies? Now, when you get to that figure, that's already probably well over the amount of people in Palestine right now. Then you have to add that there were nations that were all around them crammed into this land too. Put those numbers on top of all of this, and then you tell me how that land and its surrounding area was sustaining all of those people, as well as livestock, and even more surrounding nations. There was supposed to be Moab, the Ammonites, the Amorites, Edom, the Philistines in Gaza. Do you know what problems they have getting water to Gaza to this day? Anyways, I'm at the job site and I got people waiting here for me to get them in the building, so I got to cut this short. But thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.